Welcome back, all. I'm Amy, a Midwestern Kansan girl, and this is my boat, Maritopia. After moving to Florida in 2020, buying a $5,000 Facebook Marketplace worn-out 1973 Pearson sailboat, and spending 2 years endlessly working on her, I have quit my job and have started my Solosailing adventures with the goal to truly immerse myself into as many different cultures as possible. I hope you're able to enjoy the videos as much as I do living the experiences. I'm still in Dunmore Town, Eleuthera this week. I'm the blue dot on the screen. I purposely came here for protection from the storm. While Maritopia and I have been through a couple of minor hurricanes together, this is the first real storm we've been through since leaving Florida. But before this completely engulfs us here, I have the minor task of climbing the mast that I need to attend to. Man, that is hard work. My port side spreader light had just vibrated loose over time. So I had before this windstorm comes in, I wanted to go up there and tighten it just so it didn't vibrate loose and actually fall. And I'll show you what I used to climb the mast. It's pretty simple stuff. It's exactly the same as what rock climbers or arborists use. So we've got the bosun's chair. It's way too big for me. I set in that, then that clips in front of me. I got it for free, so I'm not gonna complain. I don't have to climb the mast that often. One of the safety cables attaches here. I just use standard ascenders. So these grip around the halyard. And then they're spring loaded. So when I want to come down, I just pull back on that. And then for the last precaution, is this line attached directly to this harness. And I use a Prusik knot around a different halyard. So this is the fail-safe. If one of these fails or if somehow I loosen both of them up at the same time, even though that's kind of impossible since my weight's all on one or the other, or that line breaks, then the Prusik knot will catch me. Then I'll have no real way down except to clamp my legs around the mast and shimmy down while I pull that down. But at least I won't die. Phew. Well, the pressure's dropping. Yesterday was at about 30.2. And overnight it dropped down to 29.88, give or take, is where it's at now. So the winds have already started picking up. You can see the clouds. That's that front that's moved in overnight. So I went ahead and set 2 anchors. I've heard conflicting things about setting 2 anchors, but it worked for me and Andros perfectly. That was the very first time I'd set a second anchor. So I'm gonna do it again. So my primary one is on the chain rod, and then the secondary is on 3/4 3-strand. So it's out there about 300 feet, about 250. And then main anchor is out there 200 feet. So hopefully that holds, because these winds are gonna get nasty. So I've got the swim platform pulled up. That way when the seas get bigger in here, which they will, I mean, we're predicted to have, last I looked, sustained 30 knot winds plus 30 plus, gusts 45. So that way the waves don't slap on top of the swim platform. I also went ahead and tied the mainsail and the stack pack around the boom pretty tight. That way the winds don't start ripping anything. That's probably a bit overkill, but I got nothing but time. And here we are this evening, about 6-7 hours later, and we're down to 29.7. And the pressures would continue dropping until it bottomed out at 29.4. So the wind is starting to pick up. From the direction it's at now, we don't have much fetch, meaning the water surface to land. So the waves don't have time to build. But tonight, it's going to shift from the north. More fetch from the north means more time for the waves to build before reaching Maritopia. Well, as expected, the winds have moved in. The seas are probably 2 feet right now. I don't know if you can tell on Tom's boat. Yeah, you can't really tell, but they're about 2 feet. They are going to get significantly bigger. Safe to say the storm has moved in. Dunmore Town, which is where we explored the other day, is right there. Fun times. As predicted, the wind is now out of the northwest. At this angle, I still have land in front of me, so there's still not a lot of fetch, so the waves shouldn't get too big. But after nightfall at some point, the wind will shift out of direct north. That is direct north. So I have zero land in front of me for a couple of miles. So there's a lot of fetch. So since there's a lot of fetch, there's no land to stop the waves and slow them down. So, as I've said multiple times, it's going to be a wild ride. Whoop, whoop. So, it's, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night. Sustained mid-30s. Well, the boats are rocking. The wind has changed from the north. So we have a lot of fetch, maybe 2.5 miles. 2.5 miles, give or take. So the waves have time to build up. I can't even set straight because the waves are just rocking. With as windy as it is tonight for this storm, the front of the boat is jumping with the waves, so it'd be basically impossible to sleep in the V-berth. So I'm going to sleep on the settee tonight, but I wanted to show you all. So I've got the lee cloth set up, which is what I would use when I need to sleep in rougher conditions so that I don't fall off of the settee. Or in this case, my bed. It attaches with a hook on that end and a fancy clip on this end that I can tighten. I forget what this is called, but I just tighten that and then that puts pressure on the lee cloth, so it would be impossible or near impossible to fall out. This is one of the first sewing projects that I did, and I'm pretty darn happy with how it turned out. So to take the tension off of this so that you can get out without crawling over it, this is pretty cool. It's just got a simple clip on here that you just push. So it takes the pressure off, and now the lee cloth is dropped down. And of course I didn't let it all the way off. Pretty cool. I'll be using that to hold me on the bed for tonight. This shot should give you a feel for how much the boat is rocking in the waves. It's taken in the cockpit, which is at the rear. The rocking is always worse at the front and the back, which are further from the fulcrum of the boat. Well, as I thought, it was a pretty sleepless night. I think I finally went to sleep around 3, and that's purely because I just passed out. The waves are hitting hard, the wind's out of the north, sustained upper 30s gusts, low 40s, and the seas are just as rough as can be. So here, we'll take a look at the sea. Dinghy's back there going crazy. I'm about ready for this weather to be over. The sun is out, so the solar is charging the batteries. That wasn't totally expected that the sun would be out today, so I was conserving battery yesterday. Well, the barometric pressure is back over 30. The winds have calmed. The seas are dying. It's time to leave here. But first, one more final little task. So I have a bunch of storage underneath of the V-berth mattress. On this side is all of my epoxies and fillers and paints and whatnot. My dinghy water pump to pump the dinghy out when it gets full of water, I stepped on it and split it. Out here you can't just go buy new, so you have to work with what you have. So I'm going to dig some epoxy out and coat that pump with some epoxy, let it harden, and it'll be good to go until I can find a place to buy a new one. I'm just gonna take some sandpaper and hand sand to scuff it up. And then mix up a little bit of epoxy and cover all of these holes. This is the first time I've done epoxy on the boat in quite some time. That's a good thing. Again, when you're out here like this, you can't just find new stuff. Amazon is not overnight delivery in the Bahamas. I'm gonna mix this up. I've got some West Systems Part 1 epoxy, and then Part 2, but I'm using the fast cure, so that hopefully this cures faster. I need to get the dinghy pumped out from after the storm. I'm going to put some filler in here with the epoxy. I think it might make for a better cure, a harder cure. grace of all that's good in the world, epoxy does not stick to trash bags. I've not done the research to figure it out. If you know, leave it down in the comments for me. I'd be interested to know why. It doesn't stick to wax either. That's how I built the Dodger. Alright. Hopefully that works. It's just got to work until I get to maybe Georgetown in the southern Exumas, where I'm sure that there's a marine store that I can buy a new pump. So once I take anything out of this drawer, I've pretty well got to take everything out and reorganize it, because all the paintbrushes and stir sticks and whatnot that I have, I use to fill space. So when I take anything out, they kind of just fall. And there's a lot, it's going to be hard to tell, but there's a lot of stuff that I've got shoved into this little compartment. So time to start shoving it back in. A day removed from the storm, all tasks completed, it was time to go out of the inlet and head south. Or so I thought. Where I was anchored, I couldn't see the inlet. After motoring a few miles south, the inlet came into plain view. It was obvious how rough it still was when I was able to see the breaking waves the entire way across. Just to make sure that the waves would be too much, I wanted to get a bit closer. As I got closer, it became more apparent how vicious the waves still were. Once making the final and correct call that it was too dangerous to go out, I turned around and headed back to the bay to anchor. And this is where things went downhill, fast. At this point, you'll see the boat jolt pretty good. It's also no longer rocking, instead leaning over to the port. This is because I had run aground. Now you'll hear a steady beeping sound. This is the engine overheat alarm going off because I had left it at max RPMs for too long and had mostly stopped paying attention to it in my haste to free the boat. On top of the overheat alarm, you'll hear a different, faster-paced alarm going off as well. This is the shallow water alarm. I had to keep overriding it to get the beeper to go off. Now the boat has turned broadside to the waves from the swell entering the inlet, which is causing the boat to rock on and off of the bottom. I had to get Maritopia off the bottom before any real damage was done. I let the head sail out, hoping it would fill with wind and heel me over further to the side, which would hopefully rotate the keel off the bottom. With the engine still overheating a bit and the head sail mostly full of wind, I gave the engine full RPMs again. Finally, I was moving again. I slowed the engine way down, pulled the head sail in, and very slowly motored to a point I could drop the anchor. Once anchored, I dove the boat to thoroughly check the keel for damage. I would also verify no issues caused from the engine overheating. Fortunately, both appeared to be fine. Exhausted, I would make dinner and go straight to sleep, hoping that the seas had calmed enough by the following morning that I would be able to safely navigate the inlet. If you'd like to stay up to date and follow along with the adventures, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much for joining. I'll see you next week as we navigate out the treacherous inlet and make our way south to the famous Exuma Island chain.